Hi there, welcome to the channel. This is a bit of a compilation of all our previous Skyrim videos for you to enjoy. If you're new here, Oddities is a show where we take a walk through locations in games, finding details, moments and minutiae we just think are interesting. All the intros and outros have been removed, so you don't have to hear me repeating myself, and as always, grab yourself a tea or a coffee and sit back as we explore together. Today we're here in Riverwood, the quintessential Skyrim settlement. This place has everything one could need. A blacksmith for arms and armour, the local trader to offload your goods, and an inn to fill your stomach and rest your head. This is not a place that expects you to stay for long. The people here are familial and close-knit. Only a few households working day to day to keep the town fed. This is a village that relies on the passerby, travelling between Whiterun and Helgen or Falkreath. On the western side of the village we can find its primary source of income, the iconic sawmill, powered by this great water wheel. We can see it dripping as it turns. It's probably covered in pine tar to prevent rot, and kept constantly moving so it remains strong. Or maybe it was scorched slightly, carbonizing our resistance to time. We can hear its creaks and groans as it holds itself against the current, straining to carve the very wood it's made from. It looks like it connects to this huge gear within the mill, perhaps crafted by Alvor the blacksmith. Hod here works tirelessly to chop these great logs. One can imagine they're sent to Whiterun or beyond for the construction of houses or siege engines. With it being wartime, I'm sure he and Gerda have a mountain of orders to fulfill. Apparently Faendal here is helping out, but I watched him for 20 minutes and all he did was lean on this fence and wander about. He did chop some wood with his axe, but there's a stark difference between this log and the great trunks Hod is working. Maybe he and Hod venture into the woods with a two-person saw to fell the great pines and oaks in the surrounding lands. The river offers a nice way to float the logs back towards the town, to save their backs and time. I'm sure it took all hands on deck to stack these ones here. We have a grindstone at the back of the sawmill, likely to sharpen wood-cutting axes, or maybe a sword should wolves or bandits beset the town. I know there's a pack nearby on the way up to Bleakfall's Barrow. Beyond the mill, there's this nice little spot afore the river with two stumps, one crawling with ants. You can often find villagers sitting here, catching the fresh air or reading a book. It's a nice little place, affording a lovely view of the town and the road beyond. I'm sure the curious could park here and watch travellers coming in from Whiterun, or peer up at the Barrow and imagine a life of adventure, far from the mundanity of this place. There's a covered, what I guess is a jetty, built over the water here. Maybe this rocky wall is where they stop the logs floating down the river. Or maybe it's just a nice fishing spot. There'd be plenty of salmon in these cool alpine waters, I'm sure. It's a good spot to reflect as the day draws to a close and the mill sits silent. This is Gerda and Hod's house at the opposite end of the town, near the eastern gate. It looks like they have a cow here munching on some hay. She's likely the town's source of dairy. Gerda already owns most of the town, so it's interesting that she owns the cow too. I'm sure a lot of money flows up to her. They own a chicken. It looks like it's left an egg for them to collect later. There's no roosters in the town, so she was probably purchased in the city or from a travelling farmer. Sneaking in, we can see it's a singular roomed house with a fireplace already roaring. Above sits a slaughterfish trophy. Maybe it was caught at that jetty we visited. It looks like someone has dinner already cooking in the pot, with its ingredients laying all over this table here. Slaughterfish and various vegetables. It looks like some kind of fish soup is on the menu tonight. The table's already set. It's good forethought to do so before starting their day. I'm sure after hours of chopping logs, Hod and Gerda would just want to sit down and have a nice meal that already sits prepared. There's some cheese as well. I wonder if they made it themselves with the milk from the cow outside, or if they purchased it. We have this cupboard with pots and pans and cups. I hope their top sliding drawer is filled with cutlery, as is the norm. This bed probably belongs to Frodnar, Hod and Gerda's son. It looks like he was reading a fairy tale, or maybe his parents read it to him before bed. We have this indoor bar here. A Nord always needs quick access to their ale. Funny that there's a soul gem under the counter. Do you think they know what this is? Maybe Frodnar found it at the bottom of the river and brought it here because it looked cool? I'm not sure if the regular citizen knows what a soul gem is. Let me know in the comments if this ever comes up in the lore, because I'm curious if Hod and Gerda know exactly what they have in their house here. We have Hod and Gerda's bed, an axe handy just below, ready to fend off any thieves of the night, but who would try and steal all of their things, right? Next to the sawmill, we have Alvor the blacksmith, this burly man here hard at work on his next project. He too, I'm sure, has plenty of demand at the moment. Already, he has some equipment on this table ready to sell. He has some wood beneath, probably to light the coals of the forge. If this trough is to douse his makes, I'd be a bit concerned because I'm pretty sure that's done in oil and this looks like water. But I trust Alvor, I'm sure he knows what he's doing. We have some raw ingots lying here ready to be crafted into arms and armour. I'm sure Alvor is relishing being able to make so many swords and axes during wartime. I'm assuming he's usually relegated to hinges and nails, or fixing Gerda's mill. There's a stool here on the front deck. You can often find Alvor's wife Sigrid here watching the comings and goings of the town. It doesn't look like she's as active in the actual crafting process of the forge. Maybe she runs the business side, organising trades and contracts so her husband can focus on production. Within Alvor and Sigrid's house, we find it to be a double-storey dwelling. It looks like sleeping and eating occurs upstairs, while there's space for storage, crafting and drinking downstairs. They too have some dinner cooking above the fire. From what I can observe, it's either potato or salmon based. No axe under their bed, but we do have a shield which can be a weapon in its own right. We have two impressive deer trophies above the dining table. They look huge, so I see why someone would want to show them off. Next to them we have some herbs drying, ready for whatever meal will be made tomorrow. Downstairs we find some arrows and a bow on this table here. Maybe this is what took down those deer. Or maybe Alvor and Sigrid trade in fletching too. It'd make sense. I don't see a fletcher in town, and someone needs to stock Faendal with all his arrows. There's a bar down here, but it looks like Alvor has transformed it into another workbench. Perhaps these armours are here to be cleaned or polished further. And this must be where they chop wood to keep the fire going, staving off the chilly Skyrim air. Across the street we have the Riverwood Trader, the local shop, run by the Valeriuses, Camilla and Lucan. It looks like they're having some trouble with a robbery or something, probably nothing important. Lucan here is tending the counter, offering us plenty of arms and supplies for our journey. He must be stocked by the farms of Whiterun and Falkreath, as well as other traders wandering through the region. Perhaps he has deals with Alvor and Gerda to sell their products too. Interesting that he has so many potions. There must be a local apothecary he trades with, perhaps Arcadia in Whiterun. Above the shop is their private room with a lovely dining table in the middle. It doesn't look like Lucan spends much time on recreation, his mind always on business. Next door we find the Sleeping Giant Inn, the local tavern, with Embry out the front, plastered as per. There's a bit of a standardisation of the inns in Skyrim. Most share the same skeleton and layout. Perhaps there was one company who specialised in making inns who travelled the province, constantly making the same thing. Orgnar tends the bar here, plenty of food and drink on the counter waiting for hungry travellers. Below the counter sits an axe, I'm sure for unruly patrons. Delphine, the inn worker, wanders around taking care of this and that. She doesn't seem very important. Has a lot of books on dragons for some reason. And of course, no inn is complete without its bard. Sven here fits that role, plucking away on his lute or smacking a drum, regaling us with stories of Nordic heroes, transporting us from this ordinary place and into legend for a few verses, before we fall back into our drinks and memories. There's only 2 available rooms, so I'm assuming this is primarily an establishment for refueling rather than an extended stay. Sven lives here with his mother Hilda, taking care of her in her old age. This is the simplest house yet, just 2 beds and a fireplace. The dining table is full of odds and ends, not much space for homeliness. Finally, we have Faendal's house at the back of the village here. He's actually growing some produce. He seems like a guy who likes living off the land, so it makes sense that he provides much for himself. Within, we can already get a sense of his nature with the amount of hunting trophies on the wall. He has a troll skull under the bed. Maybe he's a lot braver than we thought, taking down one of these. His kitchen is chock full of goods awaiting the pot. Various hunted game and vegetables, a few fish and cheeses. It's not my place, but I think Faendal is probably a better option for Camilla than the guy who can't even keep his table clean. On the other table, of course, we find some weaponry and armour, a spare bow in case his current one is in need of repair, and extra arrows to loose into prey. A lot of Faendal's literature is about adventures and heroics. It can be assumed that he's trying to mimic the heroes of these tales somewhat, forcing a masculine ideal that he thinks he needs. It could be said that he's sacrificed friendship for this, as he lives alone out here, and none of the townsfolk tend to think of him too much. It seems Faendal is caught up in an image he wants to impose, which, ironically, is preventing him from forming a unique one to himself. And that's all the dwellings in the town, so let's do a little roundup. We have these defensive walls with balconies that overlook the roads. I know there's a bandit camp in a mine nearby, so these are useful for seeing any potential raiding parties coming. Alvor probably isn't happy about having the local mine overtaken. I wonder if it was worked before the bandits took it over, or if it had been abandoned. He doesn't seem to want for ore or ingots, so I suppose he has an avenue of supply unrelated. Of course, the aforementioned Bleak Falls barrow visible from pretty much everywhere in the village. I'm sure the people of Riverwood have some ancestors buried up there who now stalk the halls, their old bones animated by cursed magics. We'd better take care of that when we can. There's these obelisks on the northern end of town on the path to the barrow, probably indicating some ancient path of reverence or remembrance, now sadly forgotten. There's no moss growing on them, so someone probably cleans them every now and then. These particular mushrooms were used in the reveal trailer for Skyrim Special Edition for some reason. And finally, the cart full of cabbage that sits in the sun, waiting for Lucan to hurry up and run them inside the shop. Bleak Falls Barrow, a place we all know and love. To an extent. It's the first Nordic ruin we visit, should you follow the main questline, waiting for us to delve into its ancient halls in search of forgotten treasures. From Riverwood, we can see the looming barrow casting a shadow over the town. It's in our peripheral from the first instant we enter the region, almost begging us to come investigate. We could go to Farengar or Lucan to get quest incentive to come here, or we could brave it with no knowledge of what awaits us within. We'll usually approach from the east, taking the path up from Riverwood, and are greeted by this awesome view. The barrow's sullen grandeur standing steadfast against the wind blowing up the mountain. Like most Nordic ruins, its design is draconic or avian, these arches reaching up to the sky like sails, almost making us think of a longship. Otherwise, we could consider it skeletal, denoting it as a place of burial, or of further relation to dragons. It kind of looks like their bones. There's these lookouts dotted around the structure, affording a view of the valley beyond. I'm not the most versed in Elder Scrolls lore, so let me know if there's a specific reason these are here. They would certainly give a defender ample time to see an enemy coming. Speaking of defenders, we have some bandits patrolling the place. I suppose these guys drew the short straw, stuck out here in the freezing cold on the off chance someone comes after them after stealing Lucan's golden claw. As we approach, we have some cairns and obelisks, guiding travellers towards the barrow. After taking care of the bandits, we can have a look at the door, emblazoned with 2 dragon heads. I wonder if these smaller dragons on the side are meant to convey their connection to flame or frost. Moving inside, we are greeted by a grand entrance hall crumbling under the weight of time. Snow falls softly through the open roof as the winds of the mountain howl outside. We can find some dead skeevers. It looks like they took 2 of the bandits down with them, which is a little embarrassing on the bandits' behalf. Their companions have elected to just leave their bodies here. We can assume theirs is an alliance of convenience. There's probably not much love between them if they're just gonna move on like this. We have an altar, or embalming table here. Perhaps bodies were ceremonially prepared in the entrance here before being moved further into the crypt. The bandits had a little makeshift camp here, fire roaring to stave off the cold of the mountain. I can't imagine trying to sleep here, terrified something would creep up from below to grab me in the night. I'd at least move a little more towards the entrance, away from this terrifying gullet of a hallway leading down. A bit of foreshadowing here as we push through these cobwebs. I'm sure all kinds of creepy crawlies have wormed their way into this place over the centuries, claiming it for themselves. Through here we get some more altars holding burial urns and gifts. I wonder if the depth at which you were buried relied on rank or influence. I love these roots running along the floor. It almost feels like the earth has claimed this place and now controls it like some kind of underground forest. Who has lit these braziers? It's always been a question of mine in regard to Skyrim dungeons. I guess in this specific one the bandits might be lighting their way as they go, but as we continue I can only imagine that Draugr are doing it, who are weak to fire. We can see Skyrim's smartest man here, solving the first puzzle of this dungeon. Where do you think they keep the ladder to light these basins above us? I like that there's a lever on the other side of this gate, explaining how Arvel closed it behind him. Down this well, we get some first-hand experience with the skeevers that have infested this place. More and more webs cling to the walls around us. You can't help but feel a chill down your spine. I am not an arachnophobe, but seeing this amount of webs would certainly make me one. There's some stools in this chamber around the embalming table. Maybe priests would sit here as the body was prepared. Continuing deeper into this nest, we hear Arvel's cries for help and meet the architect of this webbed domain. After defeating it and letting Arvel make another ill-advised decision, we can look up to see where it came from. What is this light, I wonder? We're probably a bit too deep for it to be sunlight. Maybe there's some sort of magic apparatus in the chamber above? If we look below, we can actually find this little room with no discernible exit. Chasing after Arvel, we find ourselves in the graveyard itself. Bodies of long dead warriors lining the walls, some less dead than we would hope. Real folklore refers to Draugr as the guardians of old places like burial mounds, protecting the treasures that lay within. Apparently, the indication that someone will become a Draugr is their body not being buried horizontally, rather left vertical or in a sitting position. Old burial rites would have bodies carried in such a way that they would not be able to see where they were being taken, unable to find their way back out of their resting place. It can be assumed then that many of the traps that lay within these places are actually to combat the Draugr themselves. We just happen to be caught in the crossfire. As we fight our way through, we come across this underground waterfall, likely sourced at some basin, or coming from melted snow that has seeped through the rocks of the mountain. If this is so, then these wooden scaffolds above us are doing a good job preventing this place from coming down on our head. With our path blocked, it actually looks like we take the unintended path onwards, barred by this gate. It seems like we exit the barrow and enter the cave system it was built into, sidestepping the crypt in a way. We reach this tube that allows sunlight from above. This was probably carved by the waterfall and the rain coming through this crack in the earth. Past the caves, we re-enter the barrow. These chambers barely cling to their foundations. The pillars here bend under the weight of the ground above, threatening to crumble at any second. This segment is referred to as the sanctum, presumably the most sacred and important of places in the barrow. It's guarded by this many-headed bonfire, casting shadows around the chamber. It's interesting to look at mythology and folklore, and how many times something with multiple heads appears as a guard or defender of something, With the odd way this next chamber is set up, you have to assume the barrow's construction conforms to the natural caves of the mountain somewhat. Chambers rising and falling to make sense of this network of rock. Of course, the Hall of Stories. Legends and sagas retold, carved into the walls here before the iconic dragon claw door. It feels more like we're opening a jail cell, which is probably why the claw puzzle is pretty easy. This final chamber, almost sitting apart from the barrow and in the mountain itself, still has some lovely natural lighting. Of course, the word wall gifts us its knowledge, and we are introduced to the boss of this dungeon. Likely the leader of whatever warband was buried here eons ago. He carries the Dragonstone. I'm sure that'll come of use later. I wonder if this is the same underground river we were below earlier. We have these pillars of stone that don't look quite natural. Maybe these were obelisks like the ones outside, but the builders ran out of time. Out through the Skyrim door, making any security we faced before kind of pointless, we reach the final image of this dungeon. A little shrine topped with a skull. I wonder if this is a part of the barrow or was retrofitted later. Maybe a local comes here to remember their lost loved one, or perhaps a necromancer has made use of this place. But surely no witches live nearby. And with that, we've made it out, and somehow not lost the drive to continue our playthrough, as tends to happen in this dungeon. I've rushed through Bleakfall's Barrow so often, I never really appreciated it for what it was. A lovely introduction to Nordic ruins, and the ancient worlds we'll be exploring as the game progresses. Down in the southern reaches of Skyrim, we can find the forested town of Falkreath. A melancholic place, tucked away from the world, an obsession with death permeating its populace. Falkreath is strange, being one of the province's capitals, yet about the size of a small village in typical Skyrim fashion. But there is a nice trade in that now we can find it packed with details about the daily lives of its citizens. I've always been on the fence on whether I prefer bustling cities or ones where each person has an individual schedule, character, and life. We'll usually approach Falkreath from the northeastern gate, the trees kind of parting to reveal it. Already we can see it's a bit more developed than the typical village, with these large defensive walls. Interestingly, there's no gate, just an archway. These curved segments holding the archway up show an expertise in woodcraft. These likely would have been grown specifically for this role and hand-cut to get the curve just right. The banner of Falkreath sits on the outer wall, this lovely purple cloth with a stag in the middle, antlers intertwining to form a heart. To me, that invokes familiarity, connection, and kinship. It can be assumed that these are some of the values of this settlement and region, or perhaps the ruling family's tenets. There's another wall here connected to the stone entrance. This one is constructed with wooden stakes, so it's probably newer. It could be supposed that this wall was not always here, but has been constructed during this time of war to give the town some extra defense. Entering, to our right we can see a lumber mill, identical to the one in Riverwood. I'd imagine this one produces a lot less power though, sitting along this small stream rather than a river. The water probably loses a bit of momentum in this larger basin here, and looks to run underground at the other end. Unfortunately, these logs have rolled off this pile here. It'll be quite the job to get them out of the water. This mill does not seem quite as professional as Gerda's. We can find Bolund here working the mill. He seems to be the only worker, keeping the place running steady day to day. Bolund lives here at Grey Pine Goods with his brother Solaf. Inside is fairly ordinary, not overly stocked, just some potions, a few simple weapons, and some foodstuffs. We have some pheasants hanging by the fire. I guess either Bolund or Solaf get out hunting in the woods from time to time. It looks like their meal of choice for the day is a collection of cheeses. These two trophies above the dining table are a little disconcerting, kind of overlooking whoever decides to sit here. Their beds are here, but one has not been pushed up against the wall like the other to make room for this lamp here. Organisation doesn't seem to be the brothers' strong suit, and I don't think aesthetics are front of mind. Past the mill, we come across Dengir's house, the prior Jarl of Falkreath, now spending his days pacing about the place, paranoid of schemes and secrets. His maid Tikla helps keep the property clean, while his brother Thadgir also lives here. Inside, we get a sense that Dengir has retained his rich lifestyle of being the Jarl. His nephew Sidgir is the current Jarl, so it can be assumed money still flows into Dengir's pockets quite nicely. The beds are of this lovely carved wood, topped with linens rather than the usual hides. The fireplace is roaring, keeping the place warm, and it looks like Tikla has the makings of a meal starting to come together. Potatoes, eggs, fish, and other assorted veggies all waiting to be thrown in the pot. It doesn't appear Dengir thinks very highly of Tikla. Suspicious she's sharing his secrets, and yet still she puts in all this work, showing how dedicated she is to her role. Despite his attitude, Dengir will actually make Tikla his steward if the Stormcloaks take Falkreath, which is a little strange. On the dining table, we have what looks like leftovers of a breakfast, but only one of the bowls is empty. I wonder which two weren't hungry today. We have Dengir's bed over here, lavish as anything. It looks like this corner of the house is his domain, with some chairs and tables to entertain guests. The neighbours, Matthias and Indara, work their homestead, Corpselight Farm. They have all kinds of produce, as well as a chicken and a cow. I suppose most of the produce that Solaf sells at Greypine Goods are probably purchased from Corpselight. The cow has some piles of hay here to munch on, while the chicken has made a lovely little nest tucked here in the corner. There's a grain mill here, but it doesn't actually look like they're growing any grain. Maybe it isn't the season for it, so this might sit dormant until the next grain harvest. I'm not a farmer by any means, so I welcome corrections. The farmhouse is quite small, but very homely. We know these two recently lost their daughter in a werewolf attack, so it's interesting that we cannot find her bed anywhere. Perhaps they've already gotten rid of it, the reminder a bit too hard to bear. Being Imperial, these two immigrated to Falkreath, and it looks like they have a book on the holds of Skyrim, likely reading up on their new home. Next door we have the local inn, Dead Man's Drink. One of the inn workers, Nari, always seems to be cleaning the front deck. I guess it's either always dusty, or she just likes watching the comings and goings of the town. There isn't much to be said about the interior that wasn't already said in the Riverwood video. Valga here tends the bar, while the bard Delacour plays his tunes. Valga has a collection of wines here, ready at hand, seemingly bringing a bit more of that Cyrodiil palate, rather than the ales commonly found in Skyrim. We are almost on the border here, so it makes sense that there would be some imperial sensibilities found here that wouldn't be elsewhere in Skyrim. She knows her customers, so we still do have some ale barrels here. With Dead Man's Drink and Corpselight Farm, we're already beginning to see how the concept and themes of death have wormed their way into Falkreath. Even without speaking to the NPCs, you can get a sense of what kind of place this is, and what kind of quests you might find yourself undertaking here. And behind the inn, we see where this obsession with death comes from. The famous Falkreath graveyard. Countless ancient headstones rise from the ground here, a forest of stone themselves. The years have overrun them with cracks and lichen, yet you can still feel that sense of reverence. A layer of mist runs over them, giving that classic Gothic feel. Apparently the town was built around the graveyard, and it's become somewhat of a tourist attraction for the morbidly curious. We can find Kust here, a worker at the Hall of the Dead, tending to the graves. We can often see him standing in silent reflection, perhaps offering prayers or words of kindness to the dead. Behind the Hall of the Dead, we can find these gravestones here, more so obelisks than headstones, with the graves being cairns instead of dirt. Maybe someone versed in the lore can explain why these graves are different. Perhaps they are the Jarl's family, denoting them as the rulers of Falkreath, so they earned these more intricate graves. We have the Hall of the Dead itself, the entryway flanked by 2 shrines of arcade, good for getting rid of our debuffs. It's a pretty quaint hall, more of a living quarters for Kust and Runil, the priest here. There is another shrine of arcade here with a stool looking upon it. I'm sure the people of Falkreath frequent here to reflect on their past loved ones. Despite the fame of the graveyard, Runil and Kust seem to be only just making do with their haul, their candles topped on barrels here. Perhaps they refuse most donations, happy to ply their faith for the sake of their belief rather than any potential monetary gain. Through dialogue and some journal reading, we understand that Runil has some deep regrets about his days soldiering for the Old Merry Dominion. Perhaps this is his form of penance, trying to atone for his actions through service to Arkay. Sometimes he ruminates on the number of graves in Falkreath never decreasing, but why would it? Next up, we come across Lod the blacksmith. From the looks of things, it seems like Lod does a lot more leather work, preparing these hides here and filling this trough with straps ready to be fitted. His house itself is actually quite sparse, not much in the way of leisure. We can assume Lod puts his life into his work, though he has had time to hunt these rabbits here. Speaking to Lod, we can find that he's actually quite observant and well-spoken. I'm sure he sees a lot, being right here next to the Jarl's longhouse. Speaking of, the longhouse towers over the rest of the town, this triple-layered roof peering around, letting everyone who enters the town know who's in charge. Guards patrol this place constantly, keeping their Jarl safe and secure. Inside, our eyes are drawn forward to the throne of Falkreath. Trophies of stags flanking the hall, with 3 skulls around the throne itself, the banner of Falkreath front and centre. Sidgir sits here, his court quite empty. There's a rug on the ground before him, letting any who seek an audience know exactly where to stand. A fire pit burns in the centre of the hall, almost down to its embers. To the right we have Sidgir's room, countless trophies and treasures lining the walls. With this small step, I can imagine one tripping in the middle of the night. Maybe that's why these rugs surround the incline. To the left we have a bit of a war room. A map sitting upon the table, keeping tabs on the tide of war. The Empire controls Falkreath, so Legate Skulnar here stands representing them, his mind on defending against the Stormcloaks. There does seem to be a bit of pro-Stormcloak sentiment in the town, so I'm sure he has his hands full on the front of battle and on the front of civil unrest. Weapons line the walls here, probably to help train the forces of Falkreath against these dummies here. Health and stamina potions about the place should someone get injured, and ale, of course. Upstairs and to the right we have the room of Helvard, the Jarl's personal guard. It almost feels like they've posted him up in a storage cupboard, with food, spare mugs, and sacks of flour and the like. Helvard doesn't seem to mind though. Upstairs and to the left we have the chambers of the steward, Nenya. It seems like she has a bit of arcane ability, with this enchanting table sitting here, as well as some soul stones. An axe sits next to her bed. Nenya seems prepared for an attack to occur at any moment. There's some money strewn about. I wonder if this belongs to her, or if it's part of Falkreath's finances that she's sorting through. We have 2 buildings to the side of the longhouse here. First, Grave Concoctions, the local alchemist. Inside, Zarya busies herself crafting and selling potions and poisons. All kinds of ingredients lie about the place, well organised and ready to be used at a moment's notice. There's a troll skull on the ground here. Zarya doesn't seem like the warrior type, so perhaps she was harvesting it and put it aside after getting everything she needed. Through dialogue, she mentions that she enjoys making poisons, and sure enough, we can find plenty for sale. I'm sure there's a local group nearby that would give her plenty of business. But her potions are far too strong for a warrior like us, so moving on. We come to the barracks, the housing for the guards we've seen trotting about the place all day. It's this double-storey building with a balcony, not unlike the prefab we've seen most of the traders using for their dwellings. Inside we have this training hall for the guards to keep their skills sharp. Instructional booklets, weapons and potions lie about the place. It seems well used. The Falkreath guard do seem quite disciplined compared to those of places like Riften. Upstairs we have 3 beds for them to fall into after their watch is over, as well as this table here with some coins upon it. Perhaps they play a game or 2 of dice or cards before bed. With this being Skyrim, it's probably a drinking game. Below the barracks we can find the prison. Quite a large place with this sizable cell here. Nobody inside, but there's still some bread on the table. Maybe they only just let someone out. There's a table here for whichever guard is watching the cells. A quill sits nearby. likely to fill a ledger detailing prisoners and their crimes to keep things nice and orderly. There's some cobwebs on the roof here. The guards probably keep this place dank and dark. Further punishment for their prisoners. To the left here, we can find this solitary cell, and within, the talk of the town. Sinding, the werewolf, the man responsible for the death of Matthias and Indara's daughter. It's hard to say if this was designed to be a cell. It looks like a retrofitted well, but either way, having this constant freezing water at your feet is a next level form of cruelty, likely saved for the worst of Falkreath's criminals. Do you think Sinding deserves this punishment? He seems pretty remorseful, but I'll leave you guys to discuss.
Citizen.
With that, we've gone through all the dwellings in the town, so let's take a look at the surrounds. Following the river up from the mill, we can see this waterfall. Further up, it looks like it's sourced from melting snow, or some underground vein flowing through the mountain. Needless to say, the water would be very cold. Above the town, we can find Shriekwind Bastion, a Nordic ruin. It overlooks the town in much the same way as Bleak Falls Barrows does with Riverwood. There's Draugr and skeletons wandering in the outside, so I assume the people of Falkreath don't get up here much. It would be pretty terrifying to see their blue eyes from the mountaintop at night. Best to stay indoors in this region. Way up this mountain, on the southeast of the town, we can find someone who's not taken that adage to heart. Agni lives up here in her little cottage, living off the land and practicing with her bow. Through dialogue, we learn that her family was killed, and after getting revenge on those responsible, she escaped to a solitary life in the snow. We can see she's very self-sufficient, with a large fire going outside, cooking some meals. A lean-to sits here, keeping her firewood nice and dry. I wonder if it was her that constructed this staircase here, easing access to the house and preventing a slip that could take you off the cliff. Inside hangs all kinds of dried produce, supplies, and a table to have her supper, should the winds outside grow too strong. This has to be one of the coziest places in Skyrim. It really feeds into that desire to just escape from the world and into the wild, living as our ancestors did. Though, you can imagine it could get quite lonely. Agni here doesn't seem to mind though. On the outskirts of the town, we come across this black pool and a mysterious door beyond. But that's an oddity for another day. And that's pretty much Falkreath itself. There's not a whole lot to it, but it's a starting point for quite a few interesting stories. There's a darkness that lies over the place, and a lot of the quests do explore those Daedric, occult themes. Far below High Hrothgar, sitting in the shadow of the throat of the world, we can find this sleepy little town. On the fork of two rivers that run down the channels of eastern Skyrim, its people work the mill and farm, making small talk with pilgrims travelling towards the iconic 7,000 steps. Today we're in Ivarstead, another of Skyrim's many villages. It's quite a bit smaller than Riverwood and Falkreath, but its natural surrounds offer us a ton of awesome world design and environmental art. From the minute you enter, the road and architecture draw your eyes towards this bridge at the base of the mountain. Being so iconic, it makes sense that the populace would want to make it as clear as possible for travellers to find their way, much like a tourist town in the real world. You can imagine that the travellers bring a lot of business to the local tavern, and maybe buy some produce and supplies from the farm. The town also has a sawmill. We did a full breakdown of Skyrim's mills in the Riverwood video, and this one is much the same. Its water source, however, is wildly different. We find these rapids coming from the fork, water barreling down this rocky descent. There's this huge altitude change in eastern Skyrim, the land falling away, and the rivers have naturally carved paths downwards. It looks like the settlers of Ivarstead recognised the power that would be behind these rivers. This town could probably cut more wood in a day than Falkreath could in a week, with the glorified puddle they use to power their mill. Looking at the fork itself, the river just before the rapids seems to be flowing in a different direction. It's not clear if water in Skyrim works differently, but it is a little concerning. Back to the town, we find the Villamere Inn, the aforementioned place pilgrims would stay before their trek. We can find the owner, Wilhelm and his bard Linley taking care of the place. In the centre of the inn, we can see these 3 chairs arranged to face one another. I suppose it's just a communal setup, but it kind of gives the sense of a town meeting. Maybe the leaders of Ivarstead meet here to discuss the goings-on of the village. I don't see any other place to meet, and the inn has mead. Perfect for a Nordic dialogue. Wilhelm's selection of food is a bit more sparse than the other taverns we've seen. Mostly bread and cheeses. It feels a bit more provisional. I suppose a lot of his customers won't be staying long and need food that won't perish as quickly. Wilhelm himself says they don't get many people here who aren't heading up to the mountain. This place being so remote, it's a good thing they have barrels upon barrels of ale to keep themselves warm and happy should supplies dwindle. Klimek and Bassianus live in this cottage here. It's all very dramatic, both of them vying for the heart of the local farmer's daughter. Haven't we all had those roommates we just tolerate? They do quite well for themselves, both fishing in the local rivers. We can see one of their trophies front and centre, and it seems their diet primarily consists of fish. Out working every day, their house sits mostly unused. Not really set up to entertain guests. It's a roof over their heads, but not much more. Fellstar Farm next door is fairly quaint. Only a few things growing in the cold ground, but they do have the most animals we've seen so far. A cow and 3 chickens. We can see this little coop they've constructed here for them to lay their eggs. While small, we can get a sense that the family are very good at what they do, making use of all the space they have to keep the farm running. They're all a bit on edge though. Fastrid, the daughter, having her mind set on leaving town and making her own way. With the mindful setup of the farm, we can see how this change would affect the careful ecosystem her parents seem to enjoy. Inside, we can see their lodgings are also minuscule, jamming 3 people within. The parents, Botti and Jofthor, have separate beds. We could infer marital problems, but some people just prefer to have their own bed. Maybe one of them tosses and turns a lot. One thing I enjoy about side characters is when they're given a small quirk that makes them instantly memorable. I've always enjoyed visiting Temba and Gwilyn at the mill for this very reason. The Bosmer worker is always upbeat, having sworn to have a positive outlook on life despite any hardship, and even here, in the middle of nowhere doing mundane work, he happily chirps greetings as we pass, a smile always on his face. I think we could all try and be a bit more like Gwilyn. His boss, Temba, has a different kind of quirk. She just hates bears. It's all she'll talk about, and she'll even send you on a quest to kill a bunch of them for no particular reason. Apparently they're destroying the trees she needs with their scratching, but we can see plenty untouched in the surrounding lands. The Ivarstead mill runs well enough, despite the dichotomy between the two. Poor Gwilyn having to put up with Temba's agitated musings, sometimes getting caught in the crossfire. It always brings me a bit of joy to hear the two's contrasting voices as I pass through the town. Across the river, you can find Nafi's dilapidated hovel. It's a sad sight to see him, trapped within his own mind as he dawdles around the cold shack. He sleeps in this bedroll here and still manages to stay fed, the villagers donating some of their supplies to help him. Interestingly, there's a Dark Brotherhood contract out to have Nafi killed. I wonder who he slighted to merit such a response. On the bridge here, at the base of the mountain, we can find one of my favourite views in Skyrim. The river running down the cliffs towards Windhelm, drawing us to continue our adventure. It gives a bit of that vertigo feeling when you look down at the rushing rapids below. A slip here would certainly end badly. On the ridges at either side, you can see how the river has cut its way through here over the centuries, and with this discoloration and lack of vegetation on the left, we can assume its depth changes often with rainfall or melting snow in the warmer months. Nobody tell Temba, but there's a bear cave right here to the north of town. There are 2 dead hunters at the mouth, mauled by one of its defenders. The villagers don't seem too concerned about the bear. It probably avoids entering the town, stalking the wilds to escape more hunters, or Temba. Within we can find another, These two were likely mates, defending their home as they prepared to hibernate, or maybe give birth to cubs, which would explain their aggression. There's a smashed cart and pickaxe lying on the ground. It looks like someone was trying to stake their claim and do a bit of mining in this cave before their unlucky encounter with the bears. There's a book on heavy armor forging and a corundum vein. Maybe it was a blacksmith looking to get into the armoring business. I don't think that venture will be going anywhere. Unlike the other villages we visited, the Nordic ruin of Ivarstead does not overlook it, but rather almost sits within the town itself. Wilhelm the innkeeper warns us about Shroud Half Barrow's haunted nature, and rest assured, we'll be taking a look within soon. Speaking of Nordic ruins, to the east of town, across the lake, we can find the ancient tower of Nilheim. It looks like it was a watchtower, giving an unrestricted view of the surrounding lands. It gives us a good sense of how the throat of the world dwarfs Ivarstead, the great mountain rising from the ground like a spear. The tower's been claimed by some guards. They seem quite friendly, I'm sure we can trust them. I don't think the people of Ivarstead get up here much if these people were just able to walk in and make it their own. It looks like they've been here a while, with tables and chairs surrounding their fire pit. There might have been a wall or walkway surrounding the watchtower. We can find a remnant here, but whatever the structure may have looked like, it's been buried beneath the dirt or crumbled away into the river. And that's pretty much Ivarstead. It's not a place we're meant to spend much time in. A fetch quest or two and the Dark Brotherhood are really the only things that bring us back here after our journey up the mountain. It's nice that it does exist though. The base of the mountain could have just had a trail marker or ruin indicating the way upwards. But instead we have this settlement who revere the climb and offer supplies to any who dare to undertake the journey. And it makes sense too. A lot of natural wonders of the real world have a town nearby who will base a lot of their economy on tourism to the place. The only thing Ivarstead is really missing is a gift shop. Maybe Wilhelm could sell some I Survived the 7,000 Steps t-shirts. On the western edge of Whiterun Hold, we can come across a small farming village. A prosperous place, soil sprouting all kinds of produce. But no place can ever be perfect. Today we're here in Rorikstead, one of the more iconic settlements in the game. In fact, it's one of the first we hear about from poor Lokia in the opening. Most seem surprised at its abundance, and approaching from the southern road we can see this firsthand. Cowflop Farm wraps around towards the hill to our right. This is the biggest farm we've seen in the series yet. Endless rows of wheat and some cabbages and potatoes. We can already see how this town gets its wealth. Sitting here at a crossroads between Whiterun, Solitude and Markarth, I'm sure they have all kinds of trade deals with the capitals. They have some chickens, but interestingly, no cow. For a place called Cowflop Farm, you'd expect them to have at least one. Maybe the flop refers to their distaste of cattle. I'm sure one would be keen to eat all of these wonderful crops. Still odd to name your farm for manure of an animal you don't raise. Ennis and Reldith work this farm, living here at the farmhouse. Inside we can see it's small, but filled to the brim with foodstuffs and supplies. Cheeses and warm bread, vegetables packed onto this shelf, and 2 freshly baked pies waiting for the farmers upon the day's end. But it's not all this homely stuff that catches our eye, but this twinkling soul gem sitting on the bedside table for all to see. An odd thing for these simple farmers to have, for sure. Across the road is Lemkil's farm, a bitter man who works the land while caring for his 2 daughters. Caring is in quotation marks. It seems he lost his partner some time ago and has not taken it very well. Despite this grief and bitterness, his farm is also prospering. It's hard to say if his daughters help out with the field work, or if all of this is by Lemkil's hand. At the western side of the farm, we can see how these ridges of rock kind of cradle the town within. protecting it from the harsh winds that would bellow across the plain or in from the reach. Inside their home reveals another simple farming hovel. Lemkill's bed directly by the door as we enter. Perhaps he gets cold at night and prefers sleeping next to the fire, or harbours a protective nature of his space. His daughter's beds are here. It looks like one or both of them are learning how to play the lute and flute. Maybe we have some future bards on our hands. There's 2 sweet rolls as well, waiting as a treat to the girls. With his treatment of them, it's strange to imagine Lemkill would go out of his way to source these for his daughters. Maybe he tries to better himself, slipping often. Or perhaps one of the more friendlier townsfolk delivered them. Across the way is the local tavern, Frostfruit Inn. In its yard we find some cows. 2 of them. Cow flop probably isn't a good name for an inn though. As always, the interior is much the same as other inns and taverns we've visited, but Mralki, the owner here, stands over this lovely carved wooden bench and stocks all kinds of things to buy. Beers, meads, and wines from all across Tamriel. Game and poultry ready to be stewed, and I would hazard to guess all these great barrels are filled with ale. Mralki here has supplies for years. Above us, lining the walls, are 12 wreaths made from what look like snowberry bushes. Maybe this is the frost fruit the inn's name refers to. I wonder if Mralki here crafts his own brew, using the berries to add some flavour. His son, Eric, lives here too, who dreams of an adventurous life. Mralki is protective of his son, demanding he stay here in the village where it's safe. Weirdly, much like Lemkill, it seems Mralki's partner perished some time ago as well. A strange coincidence, to be sure. The last building in town is Rorik's Manor, the leader or mayor of the town. All money in Rorikstead runs up to him, with him presumably owning all of the farms in the town outright. Despite saying he founded the town, in the song Ragnar the Red, an assumedly much older song than Rorik, the titular Ragnar is said to have travelled through Rorikstead. How could Rorik have founded a place that already existed? And strange that he coincidentally had its name. Either something strange is happening here, or the song was updated by the Bard's College to include modern geography. I don't think musical historians would do that though. The manor is chock full of stuff, just like the other houses, if not more so. Food and drink, an indoor bar fully stocked, piles of hay waiting to be run out to the cows by the inn, and all kinds of immaculate silverware. And of course, another soul gem. One sitting within a farmhouse was strange enough, but 2? Rorik lives here with his old war buddy, Joanne. At first I thought they might be lovers, but they have separate beds. Maybe they hide it, or it indicates that they too don't have partners any longer. Joanne here actually knows a bit of magic. We can hear him offering to teach one of Lemkill's daughters a bit, in order to help her protect herself. And that's Rorikstead itself. A place that left me with more questions than any other we visited. Why do some of the townsfolk have soul gems in their houses? How did Rorik come to found a town that already existed, and one he shared a name with? And how come most of the male townsfolk have had their partners perish? Maybe something darker is going on here. Adding to the strangeness, to the north of town we can find Lund's hut, a pack of skeevers tottering around the front. There are more inside, along with the corpse of poor Lund. Was Lund one of the townsfolk, living a bit further out? With no word from him, it's a wonder the villagers didn't do a wellness check of some kind. Where did these skeevers come from, anyway? Lund's house is a mess, all of his stuff strewn about and scattered. With him being in his bed though, it doesn't look like he struggled. More so attacked in his sleep. Weirdly, the northern side of his house is blanketed in thick cobwebs, with mushrooms growing up from this dirt patch. Just how long has Lund been dead? And if so, who the hell lit the fire? There's a cairn outside with a single candle placed upon it. Maybe this is a gravesite for someone Lund lost. With him being alone, I wonder if he too lost his partner in some way. Strange. To the west of town, up the hill, we can find this dragon burial mound. Good thing they've been dead for eons. Can you imagine one attacking Rorikstead? This place gives us one of the best views of Whiterun Hold and its surrounds. A good place for a picnic. Further upwards, we can follow some smoke in the air to come across Serpent's Bluff Redoubt, a camp of the Forsworn. With this open fire, it doesn't seem like the Forsworn are hiding as they usually would, and I'm sure its light would be visible from down here in Rorikstead. Maybe the villagers have some kind of deal with the Forsworn. Within, we can find it's built into a Nordic ruin, and in the main hall it looks like they were getting up to a bit of sacrifice. The Hag Raven, their leader, watching over it all. We'll finish here today at this fallen tree, one of my favourite spots to sit and look out over Whiterun, watching people come and go from Rorikstead. Perhaps we should think twice before visiting this place. I'm not one to accuse anyone of wrongdoing, but maybe the fertility of their land took a sacrifice of something more than simple hard work. To the north of Falkreath, hidden away on this hilltop, is an unassuming cabin. It sits strong and silent, not a soul to greet us. Today we're here at Pine Watch, this hunting cabin of sorts you can come across while exploring the forests of Falkreath. From the outside it looks like any other home in Skyrim, but of course, any who've played the game know it hides more than meets the eye. There's a great deal of chopped firewood out the front and around the back. This place is clearly stocked, with some fresh veg in this cart and a small garden that seems to be growing well. At first glance, it seems to be something of a shared shelter, aiding hunters and survivalists by allowing them to escape the cold winds or predators of the night. A lantern is lit, so clearly someone has been here recently, or perhaps dwells within. Walking up the hill a bit further, we can see just how close Pine Watch sits to the snowline. In the colder months, I'm sure the drifts descend, making the place essential for those seeking passage through the frozen land. There's plenty of deer and elk in the forest, and this river where you might be able to catch some salmon jumping the falls. In fact, it looks like someone was trying to do just that with this little camp here. But the fire is doused, and further on we can find what's left of the camp's owner, lying against this trunk. It looks like she might have fallen while trying to ascend the cliffs, or maybe someone with ill intentions came upon her camp. There's an apothecary satchel here, so she was probably doing a bit of foraging. There's plenty of mushrooms growing around the trunks of these fallen trees. But we've had a look at the surrounds. What about the interior of the cabin itself? Within, we get an immediate homely sense, as if blanketed from the dangerous world outside. There's weapons and food galore, and I love this green rug in the centre. It really ties the place together, and I mean that with all intent. You get that lovely escapist feeling, striking out into the wilds, away from the hustle and bustle of the cities, just you and nature. But there's a shift of footfall below. Someone is here with us. After taking care of the bandit, we can take a look around, uninterrupted. We find this roaring fire, a broth simmering away. The bandit was adding garlic. Good choice. There's barrels tucked away into this corner, holding all kinds of non-perishables, and somewhat of a feast sprawled out on the upstairs table. Far too much for one person. Through reading notes, we can find that all the firewood chopped up outside is a front. The bandits here sell it, alongside their ill-gotten gains. And we get a name, Regal Strongarm. sounds like she's the leader of all the bandits in the region, all working together to raid unfortunate carts that traverse the roads of Falkreath Hole. I'm sure we all know about the secret of Pine Watch, this hidden passage veiled by an unassuming shelf. I love that you can see the mist blowing from underneath, revealing the depths below. Pressing this button, a throat into the earth is uncovered. Mossy carved stone wrapping around us, a Nordic ruin. I'm a sucker for secret passages, and the first time finding this was such a joy. The weight of the tunnel is being held by this scaffold. I wonder just how old this wood is, and how much strength it has left within it. Downwards, we come to this great hall. Walkways run across this crumbling ruin, fog obscuring distant movements. It looks as if these walkways were built by the bandits themselves. You can see what's left of the old walkway that ran between these doors here. You can see these roots above pushing through the rock, and with the sound of shifting ground, it gives a feeling this place could collapse at any second, the weight of the forest bearing down upon this ancient place. In the centre of the scaffolding is another of these avian statues. Whatever great shrine it sat upon is in ruins beneath. It looks like the bandits have made use of this old trapdoor, allowing their poor victims to fall onto these wooden stakes below. I can't imagine any use for this other than simple cruelty. If the travellers are here, then presumably the bandits already have their goods. Unless it's something of an interrogation. The bandits attempting to get some information about the caravaners' fellow merchants and their locations or destinations. In this chamber, we can see that the bandits have put everything they have to use in defending this place. There's these walls of barrels and crates, and a walkway made from sacks, chests, and shelves. It's clear these people are resourceful, scraping everything together, nothing going to waste. And here, within their inner sanctuary, we can see just how successful this operation has been. Countless supplies and goods taken from unfortunate travellers. Ales, vegetables, books, jewels, and weaponry. Anything they can offload in this racket. This dining setup looks like they were holding something of a council. I'm sure this situation of theirs needs the utmost planning. And we can see there is some intelligence and organisation behind what seemingly were simple ruffians, perhaps taking advantage of the instability caused by the Civil War to create this network of thievery. And it doesn't just look like they deal in goods. Here we can find 2 great cages, empty for the moment, but surely awaiting poor prisoners to be held for ransom, or sold to the far reaches of the Empire. No need to worry about things that creep in the dark halls. The bandits have already slain all the Draugr that stalk this place. They haven't even bothered to clean away their bodies. Maybe they will, once they've filled the previous chambers to the brim. That being said, it can't be easy to lug all their stuff through the front door of Pine Watch, down the small staircase and through the tunnel. The bandits don't actually live too badly down here, with actual beds and what looks like a common area they've set up. They even have a bar. You can imagine them drinking the night away in here, cheering and singing after a successful raid. Looking at the bar itself, all the plates, mugs and ales are stacked perfectly. It just brings up that sense of organisation that permeates the place. These clearly aren't the bandits we're used to dealing with. It's something much more dangerous, almost a criminal empire. But all empires have dissidents, and through notes we find going through the dungeon, it seems there's something of a plan to break into Regal Strongarm's treasure room and loot it for all it's worth. Maybe Regal was a tyrant, keeping all the best treasures for herself. Or maybe she was just trying to keep the greedy hands of her henchmen away. Either way, when there's this much up for grabs, it's not surprising someone is rising up to challenge the leadership. And in Regal's chambers, we can see her paranoia firsthand. Traps upon traps to fend off anyone coming through. A dragon sitting upon its hoard. Her table is empty, no food to be found. Only letters from her father, begging her to drop this banditry before it gets her killed. A warning ignored, but not one unfounded. We strike Regal down, her paranoia not misplaced, just upon the wrong people. But who can really plan for a dragonborn to barrel their way through your place? And through the back, past a gauntlet of traps, the famed treasure room. Upon this coffin we find countless coins, gems, ores and ingots, and even some enchanted armor. There's some candlesticks. I'm sure someone will want to have those. The lighting spills down from the candles above, giving the chamber itself a golden hue. A beacon of the greed that overtook this place. And with that, we take the classic Skyrim door, leading us on the path back out. Well, that wasn't just a normal hunting cabin, and it explains where these bandits down the road who dropped a rock on my head came from. Pine Watch is one of my favourite dungeons in Skyrim. It really feels like you've uncovered this place yourself, with no map marker indicating the adventure that lies within. Thanks for watching. As always, if there's any games, locations, or details you'd like us to take a look at, let us know in the comments. Keep an eye out for more oddities, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.